Everyone watches WWE for the chaos and unforgettable moments. But did you know behind all of that there's a darker side no one talks about? But before we start, I want to let you know that this video covers some sensitive topics and I'm sharing it for educational purposes only. Let's go into it. We're starting with fact number 20, and trust me, it sets the tone for everything that's coming. Everyone would agree that WWE won't be the same without Vince McMahon, but what a lot of people don't realize is how far he went to protect his image. For decades, he had serious accusations behind his back, but for Vince didn't matter how bad the allegations were. He'd always find a way to sweep it under the rug like they never happened. And that brings us to fact number 19, where the darkness wasn't hidden, it was part of the business. Imagine one day you wake up and someone forces you to wrestle for 30 minutes with a broken neck. Sounds insane, right? But for legends like Mick Foley, Eddie Guerrero, or Kurt Angle, that wasn't insane at all. Back in the wrestling golden era, pain wasn't an excuse to not perform in a ring, and if you didn't push through, you simply wouldn't be paid for your performance. Eventually, WWE had to step in and fix it, but their solution? Well, it opened up a whole new mess, which brings us to fact number 18. After Eddie Guerrero's tragic death in 2005, WWE had no choice but to act. That's when they introduced the wellness policy, a system meant to protect wrestlers from the substance abuse that was eating the company alive. At first, it felt like a protection, but only for the wrong people. The big names like Hulk Hogan or Eddie Guerrero always managed to get away with it, while the smaller wrestlers had to face the consequences every time. And that leads us straight to fact number 17, and one of the darkest tragedies in WWE history. Every wrestling fan knows what happened on May 23, 1999. But what most don't realize is what WWE asked Owen Hart to do that night. They wanted Owen suited up as the Blue Blazer, hanging above the crowd ready to make a dramatic entrance flying straight into the ring. Before the show, they told Owen everything was good to go, but what they didn't realize was that the harness wasn't made for stunts like this. And what's even harder to accept is that nobody stepped back and asked, what if this goes wrong? Everyone there just assumed it would work, but unfortunately it didn't, and Owen fell from a tremendous height right in front of millions. And what's even crazier is WWE, after that accident, kept the show going as if nothing happened. To this day, Hart's family fights to make the truth clear. Owen didn't die doing what he loved. He died because someone decided saving time and money is more important than a human life. Now let's talk about fact number 16, and one of the biggest lies people still believe. Most people imagine top WWE wrestlers living millionaire lifestyles by flying around the world private, living in giant mansions, or driving most exotic supercars. But in reality, it doesn't look like that. Behind the scenes, most wrestlers aren't even classified as employees. They like to call them independent contractors, which sounds like freedom, but in reality, it's complete opposite. WWE controls almost every part of their lives, and on top of that, they can fire a wrestler at any time for any reason. But as bad as that sounds, it was nothing compared to fact number 15, and the story that is actually hard to believe. In 1983, WWE legend Superfly was at the top of the world, but behind all fame, something far darker was going on. That May, his girlfriend Nancy Argentino was found dead in their hotel room. At first, Snuka said she slipped. Later, he said she'd hit her head somewhere, but the authorities believed her death wasn't some random accident. The police had many questions for him, but somehow no charges were ever filed against him. And while the investigation seemed to be closing in, something unexpected happened. According to multiple reports, Vince McMahon one day showed up at the police station carrying a mysterious briefcase. But to this day, no one truly knows what happened behind those doors. And that brings us to fact number 14, and a rumor so dark, nobody dares to talk about it out loud. The rumor says that Randy Macho Man once had an inappropriate relationship with a young Stephanie McMahon, and some believe that's why WWE erased him from history for so long. Eventually, they brought him back into the team, but no one ever explained why he was kept out for so long. And honestly, both sides staying silent made the whole thing feel even more mysterious. And that brings us to fact number 13, and the brutal side of being a WWE superstar that most fans never know about. On the surface, it looks like the perfect life. Fame, traveling all around the world, and a crowd that loves you and screams your name. But the reality behind the curtain is completely different. Wrestlers spend over 300 days a year on the road, living out of suitcases, waking up in different hotel rooms, and on top of that, they usually miss holidays, birthdays, and even funerals, all to stay in the spotlight just a little longer, because in WWE, the show never ends. And that brings us to fact number 12, and one of the saddest stories wrestling has ever seen. In 2007, everyone was shocked when Chris Benoit, known as one of the most respected technical wrestlers in the world, found himself at the center of a tragedy so sad that even his biggest fans were concerned for him. After years of nasty matches, he didn't just break his body, he rewired his mind. Behind that cold stare was a man crushed by pressure, pain, and never-ending demand to perform better. On the outside, Benoit looked perfectly fine, but inside he was falling apart, and no one even noticed it. And that brings us to fact number 11, and the moment that shattered wrestling history. On November 9th, 1997, Bret Hart stepped into Survivor Series thinking he was defending his title in a fair fight. But what he didn't know was that Vince McMahon had already rigged the ending behind his back. In the final seconds of the match, when Shawn Michaels locked Bret right into sharpshooter. Before Bret could even react, the bell rang, and just like that, the match was over. Crowd froze for a second as they didn't understand what just happened. But Bret's fury eyes said it all as he realized he'd been tricked right in front of millions. And what happened next is even crazier. As Bret looked Vince dead in the eyes and spit right in front of his face, he showed the world it wasn't just some random accident. It was betrayal at the highest level. And that takes us straight to fact number 10, and the harsh reality of backstage life. Back in the old WWE locker room times, showing up and working hard wasn't enough to be a legend. For the new future stars, it meant dealing with some rough situations like being disrespected, embarrassed, or even pushed around by veterans, all in the name of earning respect. To WWE, it was all just part of the business. But behind the scenes, there was a real pressure going around and not everyone made it through. However, a lucky few who survived the grind could even become legends. But for every name in the spotlight, there's another lost in the shadows, completely forgotten before having a chance to shine. And that brings us to fact number 9, and the brutal truth about how mental health was ignored in the world of wrestling. For a long time, mental health wasn't something people really talked about in WWE. If you were struggling, you usually kept it to yourself, because if you spoke up about it, people might see you as less tough, or even worse, you'd be pushed aside and be forgotten. Eventually, WWE started bringing support and regular check-ins, but unfortunately, too many of those changes came way too late. And that brings us to fact number 8. Because while WWE loves to call itself a family, behind the scenes it felt completely different. In a real family, speaking up is something normal, but in WWE, well, opening your mouth costs you everything. Some rumors say that wrestlers who dared to question unsafe conditions weren't just ignored, they were quietly pulled from shows and left completely unnoticed. And that leads us straight to fact number 7, and one of the biggest open secrets WWE never wanted you to discover. Back in the 90s, one thing was clear: if you didn't look like a superhero, you weren't getting any title shots, no main events, and definitely no Stone Cold Steve Austin's money. But what they didn't show was the price behind those bodies. Everyone backstage knew that if you wanted to stand out, muscle wasn't just encouraged, it was really demanded. And in a system like that, there wasn't really a choice. You either bulk up fast or get left behind. Which brings us to fact number 6, and the one truth nobody inside the company ever dares to say out loud. Everyone says that making it to WWE is the opportunity of a lifetime, but nobody talks about what happens when the hype around you ends and the company no longer needs you. Most people don't realize that WWE doesn't provide any health insurance, retirement plan, or anything that could help you when you retire. The company profits from every match, but once a wrestler is no longer valuable to them, they're left to face the consequences alone. Unfortunately, most wrestlers after retiring end up completely broke. Just look at Thomas Billington, also known as one of the most influential wrestlers of all time, who spent his final years paralyzed and completely forgotten by the company. Now let's move on to fact number 5, and a proof that in wrestling change doesn't come from the top, it always comes from the bottom. When Kofi Kingston won his first championship, it felt like a dream come true, not just for him, but for every fan who had waited years to see him finally break through. But surprisingly, Kofi was never supposed to be in that spot. WWE never wanted him to be in the main event, let alone holding the championship. But sometimes, no matter what the script says, fans take control, and that's exactly what happened here. And that brings us to fact number 4, the night when one wrestler left everything, leaving everyone speechless. In 2014, CM Punk walked away from WWE, not because of a bad storyline, but because he'd been repeatedly mistreated, forced to perform through injuries, and misled by doctors putting his health at serious risk. Punk's exit wasn't a selfish act. It was a strong warning about a system that was already falling apart, spoken by one man brave enough to walk away, while everyone else stayed quiet. And that leads us to fact number 3, a reminder that even the Hall of Fame isn't as perfect as it seems. Getting into the WWE's Hall of Fame sounds like the highest reward a wrestler can ever hope for, but behind the scenes, it was never just about what you've accomplished in the ring. It was all about protecting the company's image at all costs. Some of the best legends were forced to wait or were ignored entirely, not because they didn't earn it, but because it wasn't convenient to honor them. For instance, Vader spent years hoping his name would finally be called. After he was told he had only 2 years to live, he publicly asked for induction, wanting to see it happen before it was too late. But unfortunately, WWE kept delaying it, and the call never came while he was alive. Now let's talk about fact number 2, the moment when WWE took real grief and turned it into a storyline. When Eddie Guerrero passed away, it broke the hearts of millions. WWE honored Eddie by letting Rey Mysterio carry his name with pride, dedicating every match to his fallen friend. The most jaw-dropping moment came when Randy Orton used Eddie's death to fuel heat, telling Rey Mysterio that Eddie wasn't in heaven but in hell. And for many fans, that's when tribute turned into pure disrespect. And finally, fact number 1, about one woman who didn't wait for power to be passed down. She took it when no one was watching. Stephanie didn't just rise because of her surname. She played the game better than anyone. While others fought for fame, Stephanie knew exactly how to steal the spotlight by sparking controversy at the perfect moments. She wasn't just the boss's daughter anymore. Her presence was too iconic to ignore, and Vince knew exactly what that meant. When it came time to pass down the empire, Vince didn't look outside the family. He chose her because no one else else had the fire to run this business like she could.